What would you think if I told you that a man often disappears not because he's finished with you, but because he's terrified of the version of himself you've awakened? This is the paradox no one talks about. When a man pulls away first, when he goes silent, withdraws, or vanishes into his own shadow, it's not always because he has stopped caring. It's often because he has stumbled upon something inside of you that he is not yet ready to face inside of himself. Carl Jung called this the confrontation with the anima, the feminine image embedded deep in the male psyche. Every man carries a symbolic woman inside his unconscious mind, a collection of desires, projections, fantasies, and fears. And when a real woman triggers this archetype, it shakes his inner world. Some women mistakenly believe that if a man leaves first, it's a final statement of rejection. But it isn't always that simple. The male ego cannot always tolerate the emotional mirror a powerful woman holds. Her presence, especially when she is self-contained, spiritually radiant, and unapologetically herself, activates parts of him he cannot yet process, so he disappears. Not because he's finished with you, but because he's unfinished with himself. And this is why he always comes back. He leaves to escape, but finds no relief in distance. His mind replays conversations. His heart remembers the way you didn't chase. He scrolls through his phone at 2 a.m., staring at your name, wondering if you've already forgotten him, secretly hoping you haven't. But you don't reach out, you don't beg, you don't explain, and that silence becomes louder than any words you could have said. This is not a game. It is not manipulation. It is nature. The woman who understands her own worth allows the man's departure without collapsing into panic. She knows that absence is a teacher, and sometimes the most powerful thing she can do is hold her own energy and let the masculine unravel on his own timeline. Because here's the truth. Most men don't leave because they don't care. They leave because they are terrified of dissolving. When a man meets a woman who doesn't need him for validation, who doesn't beg for his affection, who stands sovereign in her own life, his ego starts to fracture. He wonders if he can measure up. He questions his role. He feels small in the face of her mystery. And when he disappears, he thinks he's escaping that discomfort. But instead, he carries her with him. Her silence haunts him. Her absence whispers in the back of his mind. Her refusal to chase becomes the most magnetic force of all, because it's not rejection, it's reflection. And eventually the unresolved will pull him back. He will test the waters with a text, a casual message, a sudden, "How have you been?" out of nowhere. He'll pretend it's friendly, harmless, just checking in. But beneath the surface, it's something else. It's the gravitational pull of unfinished work. It's his unconscious mind begging for another encounter with the woman who disrupted his illusion of control. And you are not surprised. You have seen this pattern before, not just in your life, but in the collective masculine and feminine dance that plays out over and over again across time. The man leaves, thinking he's protecting himself from intimacy, but true intimacy isn't just about romance, it's about confrontation. It's about looking into the mirror of another human soul and seeing what parts of yourself are still fragmented, still afraid, still unhealed. Most men are not taught how to sit with that. So they vanish, they create distance, they fill the gap with distractions, with other women, with work, with silence. But distance doesn't dissolve the mirror. It amplifies it. And when the mirror is a woman who holds her own ground, who doesn't chase or apologize for her existence, the obsession grows stronger. Because the woman who lets a man leave without begging for his return is the woman who understands her own magnetic field. She is not cold. She is not indifferent. She simply knows that love cannot be forced and healing cannot be rushed. And so she lets him go, not to punish him, but to free herself. The woman who lets him go understands something most never will. Love is not possession. It is projection. Carl Jung warned of this trap long before modern relationship advice watered it down into cliches. When a man meets a woman who reflects parts of his own unconscious back to him, he will either evolve or escape. But escape is temporary. The image of her lingers in his psyche because she wasn't just a woman. She was a symbol. She symbolized everything he's secretly missing: depth, mystery, emotional sovereignty, and the terrifying idea that love does not mean ownership. And so when he disappears, he thinks he is choosing freedom, but what he's actually doing is running from the shadow of his own longing. Because a man doesn't truly fear losing a woman's body, he fears losing his illusion of control. When a woman goes silent, when she lets him leave without collapsing into panic or pleading, she steps into her own archetypal power. She embodies what Jung called the transcendent function, the psychological process where opposites must sit together in discomfort long enough for transformation to occur. Most men have never learned how to do this, so when you do not chase him, you force him into that uncomfortable space. He might distract himself at first. He might seek out easier, more predictable women, those who give him quick validation, who soothe his ego, who play the role he understands. But soon he realizes something unsettling. Comfort isn't the same as connection. He doesn't miss comfort, he misses mystery. He misses the part of himself you activated, the part that is still unresolved. And so he comes back, not necessarily because he has changed, but because the absence of your energy has created a vacuum in his mind. He tries to fill it with distractions, but the imprint of you lingers in his body like a phantom limb. He remembers your silence more vividly than your words. He remembers the moments you didn't explain, didn't overgive, didn't dismantle your own dignity to keep him. That's what haunts him. Because deep down, every man knows this truth. The woman who lets him walk away is the woman he cannot forget. He returns not for closure, but for another taste of the depth he couldn't control. His ego may tell him it's about love, but his shadow knows it's about obsession. And yet this is not about him, it's about you. You are not here to be someone's unfinished lesson. You are not here to catch a man when he runs from his own inner chaos. Your work is not to teach him how to stay. You are here to learn how to stay with yourself. And that is why you don't chase. You don't text him to remind him you exist. You don't send late-night paragraphs explaining your side. You don't post seductive photos hoping he'll see them and change his mind. You stay still. Stillness is not weakness. It is the most potent form of feminine power there is. In stillness, the feminine becomes a gravitational field. She does not pull. She draws. She does not demand. She allows. She lets the masculine choose whether he will rise to meet her or stay trapped in his own loops. If he comes back, it is because the silence became too loud to ignore. It echoed through his distractions. It whispered through his ego defenses. It tugged at the corners of his unconscious until he realized that running from you meant running from himself. But here is where the real alchemy happens. You are no longer waiting. You are no longer sitting by the window checking your phone, hoping for his return. You have already returned to yourself, to your own path, to your own life. When he reaches out, you are not the same woman he left behind. You have evolved. You have expanded. You have reclaimed the parts of yourself that once wanted to be chosen, needed to be seen, begged to be understood. Now you see yourself. You choose yourself. You understand that a man leaving is not always about rejection, it's about rhythm. Sometimes people must break their own patterns before they are ready to meet you. And if he hasn't done the work, if he comes back to repeat the same cycle, you will feel it. His return will not excite you the way it once did. It will not spark the same ache in your chest. Instead, it will remind you of the distance you've traveled back to your own soul. You'll realize you no longer need him to come back. You no longer need him to understand you. You no longer need him to stay, because the woman who chooses herself is already home. When a woman chooses herself, the dynamic shifts entirely. She is no longer orbiting around his decisions. She is no longer calculating how to make him stay or analyzing his silence like a puzzle to be solved. She understands that his departure was not about her failure. It was about his fear. His disappearance was never an abandonment. It was an initiation. And Carl Jung said, People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. And this is what most men do when they vanish first. They disappear because proximity to a conscious, sovereign woman forces them into confrontation with the shadow self, the parts they have not yet met, the emotional wounds they've buried, the chaos they've ignored. A woman in her power reflects this back to him like a mirror, and not every man is ready to look. So he leaves, but he does not forget, because leaving does not erase the lesson, distance does not dissolve the bond. In fact, when he walks away first, he sets into motion the exact thing he hoped to avoid: obsession. He becomes haunted by the woman who doesn't chase him. He becomes consumed by thoughts of the one who remained silent, who let him go without protest, who refused to collapse into neediness or perform emotional labor on his behalf. This triggers an ancient ache in the male unconscious, the ache for the feminine mystery. Most men are conditioned to seek validation, not depth. They are taught to conquer women, to win affection, to be desired, but not to surrender to intimacy. Intimacy requires ego death. It requires the dismantling of old structures. It requires vulnerability without control. And when he meets a woman who knows this, who holds her own energy like a sacred fire, he cannot simply walk away unscathed. He may attempt to replace her, to silence the echo of her presence by distracting himself with easier connections, lighter conversations, surface-level romance. But there will come a moment, often in the stillness of the night, when he realizes that what he left behind was not just a woman, it was a portal. She was the portal to a part of himself he had not yet explored, and so he circles back. Not always because of love, but because of unfinished shadow work. He thinks he's reaching for her, but what he's truly reaching for is the wholeness he felt in her presence. But here is where most women make the mistake. They interpret his return as a sign to resume the old dynamic. They soften too quickly. They open the door before checking if he has changed. They silence their intuition because the ego craves the validation of his return. This is the trap. Because the truth is, when a man comes back, it does not automatically mean he's ready. Sometimes he's only ready to loop through the same cycle again. That is why the empowered woman does not collapse at his feet when he reappears. She does not rush to soothe his guilt or smooth over the silence. She pauses, she observes, she measures his return not by his words, but by his growth. Has he confronted his own shadow, or is he merely chasing her light because he cannot generate his own? This distinction is everything. If he has done the work, if he has met his anima, faced his projections, dismantled his ego walls, then his return can lead to something new, an elevated love, a conscious partnership, a meeting of equals. But if he has not, if he's just running from loneliness, seeking a bandage for his spiritual wounds, or craving the energy she once gave him freely, then she knows better than to re-enter the loop. The woman who knows her worth is not cruel, but she is clear. She understands the difference between compassion and self-abandonment. She can love from a distance. She can feel the ache of his return without compromising her inner peace. Because she has learned the deepest lesson of all. She does not need a man to choose her for her to be whole. She is already whole, she is already enough, and sometimes the most loving thing she can do is let him go, again. This time, not with longing, but with sovereignty, not with desperation, but with grace. She lets him come and go as he pleases, knowing her life no longer depends on his presence. Because the woman who is healed no longer asks, will he stay? She asks, am I staying true to myself? In this space of self-honoring, something powerful happens. The dynamic transforms from emotional chase to energetic alignment. She is no longer playing a role in his inner theater. She is no longer the projection screen for his unresolved fears or fantasies. She has stepped off the stage entirely and returned to her center. And from that place, something paradoxical occurs. Her detachment makes her more magnetic. Carl Jung spoke often about the power of the unconscious in relationships. He taught that people are drawn not to what is easy or comfortable, but to what is unresolved within themselves. This is why the woman who holds silence, who does not collapse into the familiar pattern of reassurance, becomes the obsession, not because she is withholding affection, but because she refuses to participate in the same unconscious game. Her refusal to engage becomes a mirror for his inner conflict. It forces him to confront a question most men spend their lives avoiding. Why do I only desire what I cannot control? This is the forbidden psychology of attraction, the part that no one wants to admit. Men are not obsessed with women who are always available, who soothe their every insecurity, who hand over their energy without boundaries. Men become obsessed with the woman who triggers a spiritual itch they cannot scratch, a woman who represents the unknown, the wild, the untamed aspect of life they secretly crave but consciously resist. And when he leaves first, thinking he's escaping discomfort, he sets this very trap for himself. Because desire is not about possession, it's about expansion. A man desires a woman when she makes him feel something he cannot feel on his own, not because she gives him comfort, but because she awakens something dormant in his psyche, the need to evolve, to confront his own limitations, to break free from his ego's safety net. But if he's not ready, he will run. He will ghost. He will pull away. He will create distance, thinking he is regaining control. What he doesn't realize is that this distance only magnifies the unresolved connection. It makes her more vivid in his memory, more potent in his imagination. Because the woman who stays silent when he disappears is not playing the game of scarcity, she is practicing self-respect. She knows the archetypal pattern at play. She knows that most men, when confronted with real depth, will retreat before they can rise, and she has learned to let them. Because the feminine in her is no longer operating from fear of abandonment. She understands that men don't return because they miss her comfort. They return because they miss the part of themselves she unlocked. But here is the secret. She is no longer responsible for keeping that door open. If he wants to come back, he must come back differently. He must come back as a man who has done the shadow work, not as a boy seeking the emotional mother he never had. He must come back as a partner, not a project. He must come back willing to sit in the discomfort of his own growth, not to extract her energy to soothe his loneliness. And if he cannot, if he comes back only to repeat the old cycles of emotional evasion and shallow connection, then she knows what to do. She chooses herself again, because the woman who holds her own energy, who does not betray herself for temporary affection, is the woman who transcends the pattern entirely. She is no longer trapped in the loop of does he love me or will he stay, because she has realized something deeper. She loves herself enough to stop asking. This is where true feminine power lives, in the detachment from outcome, in the willingness to let go, in the mastery of one's own emotions. She is not cold, she is not bitter, she is wise. And wisdom knows this: the man who comes back for the right reasons will not find a woman waiting in the same place he left her. He will find a woman transformed. The woman who knows her worth doesn't chase, she chooses.